This episode is sponsored by JDAQA Software Testing, your scalable solution for manual, automated, security, and performance testing. Check us out at jdaqa.com. And with that, let's get on with the show.
This is The First Customer, hosted by Jay Agner.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the First Customer Podcast. My name is Jay Agner. Today, I have a very special guest, Rick Nucci, CEO and co-founder of Guru. I've been chasing Rick around forever. Rick is a pillar of the Philly tech scene. He's right up there with all the greats. If there was a Mount Rushmore of Philly tech people, he would be front and center. Rick, how are you, my friend?
Oh, man, you're way too kind. I am very well. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Excited to chat with you.
So much we can talk about. I do want to just bring up the fact that I saw you first at the Founder Factory event by Philly Startup Leaders, which is a fantastic organization in Philadelphia. You were doing a talk, and I believe it was based around operations. And there was this part in there where you revealed your Jason Kelce jersey, which I think half the crowd got, and maybe I'm being generous with half, but I got it, and I loved it. And I got what you were going for. Do you want to tell us a little, tell me that story of how did you come up with this idea? And how did you feel like it landed when you were up on stage?
Yeah, this is my, is this like my redemption story?
This is your chance. Yeah, get it back.
I should not be doing sports references. And this is a great example of that. And I even sort of did a dry run of it with a friend of mine who's into sports, as most people are. He's like, yeah, maybe skip over that one, but I stand by it. I stand by what I was trying to do. I mean, look, the talk was about operations people. I think operations people are, about to have a moment. I think AI is coming into the workplace very fast, and I think it will be transformative to enterprises. And my belief is that operations people are at the intersection of understanding the technology to the degree they need to, but really understanding the part of the business that they are trying to make run in a scalable and efficient way. They, to me, have the combination of ingredients. So I wanted to talk about operations people because that's my belief, right? And the thing about operations people is, if you compare them to, if you look at a typical company and you think about a company versus a sports team, they're not the roles that are putting the points on the board, right? They're not the reps that are closing the deals. They're not the engineer that built the hero feature. But if you don't have a good offensive line, you're never going to win any games, right? And so I think about Jason Kelce and how many centers in the NFL get the level of attention, admiration, love, and respect that guy gets. I would argue no one. Then again, I'm not a credible source of that knowledge, but I live in Philadelphia, hugely admire the guy and what he's done for the city, not just his contribution to the sport. And I'm like, he is this perfect analogy to where these ops roles are going, where they will be getting the visibility, attention, impact that they have had, but I think are going to kind of get put on a main stage very soon. Yep. So that was what I was going for, right? But in my talk, of course, I kind of overly focused on just, as you said, I kind of did the jersey thing. And I think most people in the room are like, why is he hot? Maybe he's just hot. He's just taking his shirt off so that, he can have something short sleeve on. It was a misfire, but that was what I was trying to say. So there you go.
I loved it, and I think it'll be one of my favorite reveals of all time. It just was great, and I think for somebody who got what you were doing, and I got the reference, but I also got to see other people who didn't. I just thought it was brilliant. It was just great. It was just it was definitely not like watching a train wreck or a car wreck or whatever. People say they can't take their eyes away, but it was just this moment. It was like an event that it was like such a thing. And I got to see all the perspectives, and it was like a cool thing to just watch. So congratulations on trying it. I think it was successful enough. And your talk in general was just fantastic. I have a great operations lead at our company, and she, like you said, kind of is the glue to everything and kind of keeps everything moving, and it's fantastic. So it really, everything you were talking about kind of resonated with me as going from a solo founder to hiring. My first hire was an operations person, and so she's been just it forever. So your talk about how important they are, and just the cross-functional nature and just all the stuff they do was absolutely hit home for me. So I wanted to make sure we covered that. So we got that out of the way. So tell me, Rick, where did you grow up, and did that have any impact on you being an entrepreneur?
I grew up in like rural Pennsylvania near Lancaster area. I wouldn't say the location impacted me, but I would definitely say my parents normalized entrepreneurship because both of my parents ran businesses through kind of my high school years. And actually, the first thing I ever did that I would sort of call a business was like a DJ, getting DJ gigs. I was like DJing weddings and stuff as like a high schooler, making like obscene amounts of money for a high school kid, like getting, $50 an hour to DJ, which is, by the way, very inexpensive price for DJing. But for me, it was like an infinite amount of money. So it definitely was normalized in the sense of, oh, this is sort of a thing that people do. I feel very appreciative of, looking back, seeing my parents operate that way. And when I sort of like took the first plunge, I was only 24 and I was only working for 2 years out of college. And that there wasn't a moment where I was like, ooh, this feels, it was all excitement and energy to kind of jump in and start something and try it. And I do attribute that to kind of my parents and their careers as I was growing up.
Was that Boomy? Was that the first one?
Boomi was the first one. Yes. In 2000. Yes.
I mean, talk about a home run on your first at bat. I mean, at least what it is today, if that was any, if that came from that effort, man, that was a grand slam, home run, whatever sports analogy you want to use. That was incredible. So where did Boomi come from? Where did the name Boomi come from, by the way? And where did this company come from?
It's a Hindi word that means from the earth. Has absolutely nothing to do with what our product, what Boomi does or did or does now. I think we like the sound of it. I think it was a memorable name and we kept it. And I think it definitely does have the memorable brand check mark. And so I think we just kind of never looked back. Yeah, that was where the name come from.
How did you start the company? Where did the idea come from? Did you have co-founders to start? Like what was the genesis of the company?
Yeah, I mean, it was like Guru. I mean, it was an opportunity born out of pain that we observed. So we were working in a software company, me and two other co-founders of Boomi. We were working in a software company, a logistics software company in Philadelphia. Oddly enough, there weren't many software companies in, 90s, 2000s in Philadelphia. And, every time we were deploying this, supply chain logistics software to these businesses, integration was always the thing. It was always the problem that the customers ended up having. It was the thing that held up the deployment of the software. It was the thing that always made the project late. It was just a sort of like constant pain. And we were looking at how it was getting done. And it was, a lot of custom coding and very brittle techniques, and felt like that could be a product. Like, this isn't something that you should have to write custom code about. And that was really the genesis. And, the thing with Boomi, it was never the macro learning. It was never a question of, is this an enormous must solve problem? It was the very first mistake we walked into when we got into the market was, yeah, it's a huge problem. And there's like 100 companies like trying to solve this already. So like we are, radically undifferentiated and have customers with way more capital and ability, therefore ability to execute, headcount, et cetera. And we retrenched and refocused completely into the Boomi that people know of today. But yes, that was the start. And it was this sort of observed pain that we lived, Do
you remember who your first customer was at Boomi?
I do. Saddle Creek, which was a logistics company based in Florida. And we had a relationship with them and, zero competitive stuff, like meaning the company we were at, we left and started Boomi. That company ended up being a partner of Boomi's, which was quite nice. But they were a customer of that company we were working at. So we had gotten to know them and we saw their pain firsthand. We saw them, really struggling with integration. And they were like, listen, yeah, if you can solve this, and they basically became a design partner for us, which was really terrific. And I think looking back, it happened because one of our co-founders, had built a good trusting relationship of his, sort of his expertise, because we didn't have customers, we didn't have case studies, we were just 3 people with a little bit of funding. But that first customer, having that design partner, let us really build and validate relatively quickly
Mhm.
kind of our first viable offering.
So tell me about you mentioned the retrenching and the pivoting, and that's just like the most bastardized word I think of the 2010s is probably pivoting. But like, what was your experience? Like, what did you end up with? Where did you kind of turn to, and what was the successful, foot in the ground that you guys pivoted to? Like, where did you turn to, and what was your eventual successful product?
Yes, yes, yes. Interestingly, I would say like the problem we were solving was the same, but we made a bet that there was going to be a big change. And so this is sort of 2006, 2007, and you're starting to see cloud companies, SaaS businesses, Salesforce.com, NetSuite, a handful. Salesforce was probably the becoming a household name, but even they were still pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was a healthy but slow growing business at this point. And we were like, look, like we're not here to grow a slow growing business. We want something that we think can be big and exciting and solve a big problem for a big market. And let's innovate. That was kind of the backdrop.
Mm-hmm.
And we had recruited in who became Boomie's CEO, my partner, Bob Mao. And he and I sat down and were like, look, if we sort of bet that the world will move to cloud, meaning like there will be this, what people today call digital transformation. Of course, this all
Mm-hmm.
happened, but I think it was a bet then. If the world moves and things get transformed, rebuilt, re-architected, the way that integration is solved will have to fundamentally change. There will need to be a new architecture. You won't be able to take the on-premise integration products that existed and just sort of put them in a different data center. You have to think about the problem in a new way. And so we said, all right, let's imagine that future and let's build from scratch a product that is meant to solve that problem. And that was effectively what we did. And that is, what is now known as integration platform as a service, or iPaaS. This category was officially sort of crowned by Gartner in, I think, 2010, maybe 2011, right before Dell acquired us, and really helped, of course, validate the category and really help with traction. But that was the big shift, and that was the big bet. And it was a bet. I mean, it was like a burn the ship strategy, meaning that we kind of just said, look, like, this is like a swing for the fence thing. So we're either going to, build something that's going to hit right in this sweet spot, or we're going to wildly miss as, cloud drives off the wrong way of the hype cycle, and we're sitting here with a product that no one cares about. And I would say we were early to market, but it ended up being a bet that worked out quite well, I think.
Right. And where did that end up? Like where like when we were talking revenue, and I mean there's big numbers, right? I mean, you guys were like
Yeah.
you drove like a lot of revenue through
Yeah.
Boomi. Like, so from this bet in an office with you and Bob, where did that kind of ultimately take you guys to?
Yeah, there it is, running with great leadership. I left long ago. It is, quickly approaching $1 billion in annual recurring revenue. It is a big business. It was acquired by Dell in 2010. It was then reacquired from Dell by private equity
Hmm.
in 2020 or 2021-ish for over $3 billion, just over $3 billion. And I think that that was a phenomenal opportunity for Boomi, that sort of second acquisition, to put new capital in the business, really kind of take advantage of this market space still being hot and still being a fast grower. And Boomi has this, continues to have this amazing opportunity in the enterprise with the great brand and traction that they now have. So yeah, it was interesting in that it was kind of this multi-chapter thing where it was acquired and kind of reacquired. And, my part of the chapter ended after Dell. I left in 2013 and started Guru. Dell was a great acquirer. Dell, took, fulfilled the promises they made about what they were going to do after they bought the business, and they continued to fund and grow it. And I think it was, I would say, I am very happy that it was a protected product business team that was able to continue to grow, and now I think has sort of enormous continued potential. Yeah.
What in a business like that it kind of reminds me of like Disney, right? I'm a converted Disney dad. We took 5 kids, 5 of the 6 down to Disney, and I did not want to go. And I was dreading the trip, and I was like, this is going to be awful. We have 2 kids under 2. It's just going to be hot. It's going to be miserable. And I went, and I was blown away. Just from an operational perspective, I'm like, this is the most impressive machine I've ever seen run in my entire life, from the buses to the people to the whatever. But then I was going, you always get back home and you like research stuff, and I'm looking up Disney and like I'm wondering about the Genesis and everything. And he died before Disneyland or World or whatever the one in Florida is, before it even broke ground. But like whatever he created in that initial company has carried on for, almost like 100 years or whatever the hell the number is. It feels the same with Boomy, right? Like, what did you guys inject into like the DNA of Boomy to create this thing that kept going long after you guys left? Like, what is the core stuff that they still have, that they're this profitable billion-dollar company that started with you and Bob having a conversation in a room? Like, something is still there from your foundation that you kind of built at that company. What is it? What makes it still tick to this day? Is it the core group that believes in the ideals that you guys put in there years ago? Is it something else? Like, what makes a company run like that for so long, even when the founders are gone?
Yeah. Your Disney bit, Jim Gaffigan does this hilarious Disney bit, except, he's not converted, right? And he's like, what my favorite ride was? The air-conditioned bus on the way back to the airport. Well worth the wait.
Yes.
So,
Big Jim
good.
fan. Yes, absolutely. He also talks about how the kids didn't give a shit about the giraffes at their window. Like the second or third day they were staying in Animal Kingdom, they're just like, oh yeah, there they are again. Like, like giraffes at your window, just like very quickly normalizes this crazy experience. But yes.
But yes, to answer your question, I mean, I think if I were to say an intentional thing was that I didn't want Boomi to be like about me or the founders. And what I mean by that is like when I did like this 6-month transition out of the business, I really wanted that to be minimally disruptive. Cause look, a founder leaves a company. It's like a thing, it's a moment and like, whatever. And so I would say that I sort of set a goal. And I remember sitting down with, at the time, John Swainson, who reported to Michael Dell and ran all of the software businesses for Dell. And I was like, look, I'm leaving, but my goal is to make this a non-event, my transition out of here. I'm not in a rush. It was like January, like, let's say like by the summer I'm leaving, I have a successor in mind, so that was the first thing. Succession plan teed up. There was this great arc of growth. Chris McNabb took over as CEO after I left and grew the business to, hundreds of millions of dollars in ARR, and did a wonderful job scaling it. But we had already been working together for a year. So we had recruited him in as a VP product at the time. And he had great product and engineering DNA, but he also had good, strong business acumen. He had been working in software businesses for 20 years. And so like, succession plan, check. There wasn't, so that wasn't going to be a thing. We sort of easy, like, pass it over. I'll hang out for 3 months. You'll transition in. And so I think that worked, in that I do think it was a pretty easy, seamless thing from a transition perspective, and the business kind of kept rolling. So I think that's a good one. I will also say that we had a culture of innovation built into the business. That sounds vanilla. So to get really specific, what I mean is, I was describing it before and I was saying, this burn the ships thing, like no customer said to us, hey, you should build a cloud native integration platform. No one was saying anything about that, right? Like we were listening to, and I have this belief today, I think customers are great at telling you their problems. I don't think they're always the best at telling you the solutions, but we were seeing them adopt Salesforce and NetSuite and these other SaaS tools, and, but we were like, look, we're going to build this thing that no one is asking for, or not remotely the way they're asking for it. And that was such a bet that ended up paying off. I think it just empowered so many people at Boomi, way beyond any contribution I had, to be like, that's okay. It's okay to like do these like things that might feel a bit radical in their, innovative, focus or whatever. And I think they have sort of stayed on that train. And I remember even like, 2 years into my Dell run, I think I was there just about 3 years, at this moment of like, it's time for a second product. And Mitch, who's my co-founder of Guru now, but ran engineering back at Boomi, he and I were like, look, there's this, tangential domain, second product, it doesn't matter as much what it is. The point is, Dell was like, yeah, cool, here, like, let's fund that, like, get after it and like apply the same kind of pattern thinking of, reinventing that in a cloud architecture. So I think that permission to innovate sort of carried through. I don't think Boomie's ever going to be a business that's going to have an innovator's dilemma problem unless there's some radical unintentional culture shift or something like that. But you look at what they're doing today, that they're all over the next transformation, which is AI.
Right. Beautiful. I love that. And it makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, let's talk about Guru. I mean, it's a great segue because everything I know about Guru, other than, some cursory research, and I always tell people I do about as much homework for these shows as I did in high school, like just enough to pass. So I know what Guru is. Obviously, it's a big presence in Philadelphia. First of all, tell us where Guru came out of and where the name came from again. I would love to know. And just what is the product first? Like, what is the product? Where did it come from? And then we can talk about the name and everything else.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the core of the product is to enable employees inside of a company to instantly find the information they need without having to dig through multiple systems, messaging tools, document repositories, or, ask a teammate. They can kind of instantly find that information. Our customers will often describe it as creating a single source of truth for their employees to quickly find what they need. And so that's broadly what the company does. And it also has evolved quite a bit as, we're now in our kind of like, I think there's a ton of analogies to cloud and what was happening in, the late, 08 to 2010, as there is now in AI, some differences too, but you see a lot of similar patterns. The name is born out of the feeling of, knowing, the feeling of having confidence that you're able to find what you need to do your job. You will never meet an employee at a company that doesn't feel dragged down by the work to do the work problem, where you're having to dig around and find all this stuff. And it just zaps energy, but more importantly, it zaps, bottom lines. It impacts everything from responsiveness to customers to, ability to execute across any function. It just creates this drag inside a company when you don't have this trustworthy kind of source of truth to go to. And so, that's the feeling we want to inspire, is that, any employee can, have the feeling much like a knowledgeable teacher would on knowing your role, knowing your job, knowing your purpose, being able to find that information. So that's sort of what led us to the name. And yeah, similarly have, 10 years later, really embraced the brand.
It's rare. I mean, you're in very exclusive company from just a success. Like, there's so many multiple, serial founders, and they maybe started a couple agencies or a couple SaaS companies, and but to found and run companies that just become their own machine and become this behemoth and have hundreds of employees and deliver all this value, and you have all these customers, like, it's a very rare thing. It's cool to see, man. It's cool to see in Philadelphia, and it's cool to see in general. Who was your first customer, Guru?
Yeah, it was Pantheon, which is a web hosting infrastructure company. The VP of sales there, Scott Crawford, brought us in. Scott Crawford and I worked together at Boomi. And so, we lived the pain of not having Guru at Boomi. He lived the pain of not having Guru at Boomi. We used to joke about, the dumpster fire of a, Google Drive, disorganized Google Drive. And he brought us in and was number one. Boomi themselves was customer number, 5, I think. But yeah, he was number one.
I always call it the friends and family plan, like the networking,
Absolutely.
and it's just great. I mean, it's like I said, it's one thing to hear that about smaller agencies and smaller businesses, and nothing against those, obviously. But when you hear that was still the genesis and still the beginning of these bigger things, it is about the network. It's about who you know. It's about building that network. So who was so I kind of who the customer was at the beginning. How has that customer shifted over those 10 years? Like who was it then versus who it is now? Are you going after the same kind of companies? Are you going after them the same way? Are you meeting these people the same way? Obviously, the size of your company is a little bit different than when you first started, but who is the customer today versus who it was to start?
It's definitely evolved quite a bit. Yeah. And I would say one of our biggest learnings through those shifts was around, you know, the differences between, people who are buying technology to solve a problem for a business function versus people who are buying technology for their entire company, right? You buy Zoom, you're buying Zoom for your whole company to be able to do meetings together. You buy Salesforce.com, and so your sales reps and your sales leader can forecast sales more effectively, right? To use two very classic examples. And so when Guru started, and I feel like one of the hardest things, and you were saying it earlier when we were chatting, is like, effectively what becomes your product market fit, but like what's your first persona that you're going to lean into and really embrace from a product feedback standpoint and a targeting go-to-market distribution strategy. And where we started after, testing a couple of different paths was sales teams. And so obviously Pantheon's a perfect doc connect to that. But, we were like, okay, listen, like there's a couple great things about selling to sales teams for this kind of problem. If their reps can't onboard quickly because they don't have a smooth way to get the knowledge they need around the product and how to sell it and position it and all of the things, well, you're costing the company money. And you can actually measure that because reps are hired and they're not hitting quota. Cool, that's great. But also you can look at things like win rates, like reps that can respond faster and be more knowledgeable about the products they're selling sell more. They just close more business. And so we're like, all right, great, let's lean into this buyer. And so that's what we did. And, a bunch of tests and fails, but where we got that initial traction, where we got to that like first million in ARR was sales teams, growing sales teams. And we're like, look, once you get to more than 20 reps, you're going to have a chaos of knowledge sharing problem. And this is right as Slack was coming out. So, but whether you're, without something like this, you're doing internal emails or you're hammering each other on Slack and right, you're asking the same questions over and over again and just slowing everybody down. And so that was where we started. That was our first buyer. There was a lot we liked about it, but effectively, if I compare it to today, Guru, might still land or begin with solving a problem for a sales team or a customer support team, but it's really an operational problem that the company has. There is nothing at the end of the day unique. There's some nuances, but at the end of the day, that shoulder tapping problem that I need to quickly find my answer problem happens whether you're in engineering, sales support, HR, IT, it doesn't matter, marketing,
Right.
it happens across every team. And so
Right.
today, and what we've really spent a ton of time figuring out is how to enable that customer journey in a frictionless way for a company to deploy Guru across all of their teams, recognizing that there is some nuance. There might be some integrations or workflows that are unique to each team, but in a way where everybody has access to this technology because it's not a departmental problem. And frankly, if you sort of just use any product in this space, not just Guru, in one department, you're in some ways exacerbating the problem because you're creating another silo, another place where someone has to remember like, oh yeah, I go to this wiki if I want to know about this. I go to the intranet for that. I go to these Slack channels if I want to know about that. Cognitive overload drags everybody down. What you want to be able to say to the employee is, you just go to this one place and it doesn't
Right.
really matter, all those other things get integrated in. So that's been the biggest journey. And so now the whole focus of the company is enabling teams to get started in a very easy, frictionless way and get some wins and get some first projects, but then be able to deploy Guru across their whole business, because that's really where we can add the most value.
Is one of the problems or barriers to entry for you guys companies worrying or wondering how they're going to get all the data into Guru?
It was for a long time. And about 2 years ago, that exact thing, combined with the rise of generative AI, led us to say, we are going to remove that as a concern. And so, you go into a company today and, marketing is using Notion, and engineering is using Confluence, and sales is using, some sales training tool, and support is using Zendesk for their customer help center, but they're also trying to make it work for their internal knowledge. That's the environment you walk into today. Oh, and then there's, amazing knowledge being shared in meetings that are getting recorded, but lost, amazing conversations that are happening in messaging tools that can be hard to find. That's the situation. And so we said, all right, that's the problem to solve, which is you're never going to convince all those people to move everything. I think historically we thought about this space when people say things like single source of truth, they thought that meant you have to literally move everything into one storage place. It's actually, I actually think that is completely redefined now. And the single source of truth is an access point of view. I want to go to one place to access everything. If it's in Slack, great, keep it in Slack. If it's in a Zoom transcription, great, keep it there. If it's in Notion or great, keep it there. And so, using a lot of our integration background from Boomi, we built a ton of infrastructure around connecting into all these different sources, from customer data to document repositories to messaging tools, so that you can create this one place of access regardless of where this stuff may live. And I think I think you framed it perfectly. It eliminates that friction that happens otherwise up front of, oh, I got to go do all this work, before I can start seeing value.
Right. That was my thought. I was thinking through, like, if we implemented that here, but I love the access shift you guys made of the perspective being like, it's an access point, not a repository. That seems like a really powerful shift, because then you can, like you said, you can lean on, not only can you lean on integrations, but you can also lean on integrations that you guys are really good at, right? So it's like a double whammy. Like, you get the benefit of all your experience, layering that into a platform that it's beautiful. I feel like I could talk to you for about a year. I think we're up against it right now, but we'll definitely do this again sometime. I have one more question for you, non-business related, non-Boomi related, non-guru related, just Rick related. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
If you could do anything on earth and you knew you wouldn't fail, what would it be?
It would be in the world of music. That brings me the most joy, I would say. My family and my friends bring me the most joy. But in terms of like pursuits, and to your question, it would be something around music. It's such a there's so much broken with it right now. In some ways it's thriving, and the artists have come out of COVID 0 to 60. And I was really worried about that during that time. And it is so not only back, but arguably, like, bands are touring more than ever. And it's really wonderful. But there's still this business side of it that is just such a, disaster or tragedy, or kind of pick whatever word you want to use, and like greed, whatever, right? Like there just appears to be a ton of opportunity around, artist first product offerings, experiences, things like that. I think that is what I would pursue, because of your point where it wouldn't fail, because I would never want to do anything that ruined, my like love of music. Right. But since you told me it wouldn't fail, it would definitely work, then that risk is off the table. And yeah, I think that would be something that would be like, massively fulfilling and awesome. Yeah.
I love that answer. When is DJ Rick's next show? Is there
I tell you, man, I'm like trying to get gigs. I've hit a bit of a dry spell, if I'm being honest. We do town halls every month, and I insert a song at the beginning of the town hall, and then I play one at the end. So that's like the closest thing I would say I have now to DJ.
I've heard about these songs. I don't know if it was LinkedIn or somewhere. I heard something about these songs that you play. So you're definitely, I think there's a comeback. I think DJ Rick is going to do hey, look, man, if you book a show, I will be there. I promise you.
I appreciate you.
I will definitely be there. All right. Well, Rick, if you want to reach out to you directly for anything they heard today, what's the best way to reach you? Is it LinkedIn, email, etc.?
LinkedIn. If you search my name on LinkedIn, you'll find me. I spend most of the different social things, most of my time there.
Me too. I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate, but I too. And how do we find Guru? Is it guru.com?
Getguru.com.
Getguru.com.
GURU.com. Yes.
We'll link that in the show notes. Rick,
thank you.
Let me tell you, man, it has been a pleasure. I legitimately just love everything you do. You've got a real genuine streak that I think has carried through, at least the stuff that I've seen you post and talk about. And just like you're a great human being, you're a great business guy. You seem to be a great, owner of companies. And I think everybody I've talked to that works at Guru or anywhere, anybody that's ever worked with you has been positive and just love everything about you. So thank you for what you do for the city of Philadelphia. Keep up the great work, and we'll catch up again soon. All right.
Well, thank you, Jay. You're too kind. I love
Thanks for
chatting with you. Thank you.
see you, buddy. Later.